A regular day at work took an unexpected turn when I got a call from my bank. "Did you approve a $50,000 transfer?" the voice on the line asked. My heart instantly sank. I rushed home, only to find my husband's parents standing there with shopping bags, smiling. "We just borrowed a little," his mom said with a wink. My husband shrugged, adding, "They'll pay you back." I smiled, picked up my phone and replied, "Actually, I just made a transfer too." The next call from the bank left them speechless. I'm 34, living in Chicago, and working in advertising. Up until recently, my life felt pretty normal. I've been married to Mark, 36, for 3 years. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but I believed we were a strong team. We don't have kids yet, though we've talked about starting a family soon. I own our house, have a stable job, and I handle most of our finances. Mark works too, though he earns a bit less, and money management was never really his strength. So, I've always been the one paying bills and monitoring our accounts. Everything changed last Tuesday. The day started off like any other. Coffee, commute, emails. I was halfway through drafting copy for a client when my phone rang. It was the bank. The woman introduced herself as Debbie, her tone polite but serious. "Hello, is this Sarah Parker? I'm calling from First National Bank. We need to confirm a transaction. Did you authorize a $50,000 wire transfer this morning?" I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. "No," I replied, already standing. "What transfer?" Debbie explained that the request came from my home IP address at around 9, directing $50,000 from our joint account to a private account under a different name. I told her firmly that I hadn't authorized anything, and asked whether the transfer had gone through. She reassured me, "We've temporarily frozen the transaction, because the amount triggered a security alert. You'll need to come in as soon as possible to either confirm the hold, or reverse the transfer. Otherwise the funds could be released within a few hours." I told my boss there was a family emergency, and rushed out. My mind was racing during the cab ride. $50,000. That wasn't an accident, that was deliberate. At the bank, Debbie met me in person, and showed me the details. The IP address matched my home Wi-Fi. The device, my desktop computer in our office room. The time, 9:06 a.m. At that hour, I was already at work. The only people home were Mark's parents. They had moved in 6 months ago after selling their house. The original plan was for them to stay for a couple of months, while house hunting for a condo, but months turned into half a year. Instead of searching for a new place, they spent their days on the couch watching TV. Mark's father is retired, and his mother hasn't worked in years. They didn't contribute financially, not even for groceries. Mark and I had argued about this more than once, but he kept assuring me they just needed a little more time. Against my better judgment, I let it go, until now. I signed the papers to freeze the transfer, added extra security measures to the account, and went home. The moment I stepped inside, I saw designer shopping bags scattered across the couch and coffee table, shoes, clothes, handbags. Even a flat-screen TV box was propped against the wall. Mark's mother, Margaret, stood there smiling like she'd just returned from a spa appointment, her hair freshly styled, nails perfectly done. "Oh, you're home early," she said cheerfully, as if we were old friends. "Wait until you see the new heel." "I got them," she said, showing off her new shoes. "Gorgeous," her husband George replied, flipping through TV channels as if nothing unusual had happened. I just stood there, completely stunned. Then Mark walked in from the kitchen, casually sipping a smoothie. I looked at all of them and asked, "Did one of you try to transfer $50,000 from my account today?" The room went silent. They froze. Margaret let out an awkward little laugh. "Oh, you heard about that." "You what?" I snapped, unable to believe what I was hearing. She waved it off, like it was no big deal. "We just borrowed a little. We're good for it. We needed some funds to finally get serious about looking for a condo. You know, down payment and all that. We'll pay it back." I turned to Mark, hoping for support, but all he did was shrug. He actually shrugged. "They'll pay you back," he said, as if I was just overreacting. I was shaking, struggling to even form a sentence. You tried to move $50,000 from my account while I was at work, And you didn't even ask? Mark calmly replied. Babe, relax. It's not like they took it. They just used your computer because they didn't want to bother you. Bother me? You don't borrow $50,000 without asking. That's not how this works. Margaret even had the nerve to roll her eyes. We thought you'd understand. We're family after all. I took a deep breath and said, you know what? I actually transferred something too. They all looked at me confused. I moved every cent out of the joint accounts. Everything's gone. I opened a private account under my name this morning, right after the bank called. So congratulations, you're officially cut off. Mark's face went pale. You did what? You've all completely lost your minds. They tried to take money behind my back. And you're standing here defending it. Margaret looked shocked. But we've already spent some of it. Then you can spend whatever money you actually have, I replied coldly. Oh wait, you don't have any. I locked myself in the bedroom, called my lawyer and started changing everything: passwords, security settings, bank alerts. I froze credit lines and began checking every transaction. That's when I found out they hadn't just attempted one big transfer. For weeks, small amounts had been disappearing from our accounts. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a planned, deliberate pattern. The bank only flagged the large transfer. Later, Mark knocked on the bedroom door trying to explain. I didn't answer. That night, I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's place. I didn't go back home. I stayed at my friend Kayla's place. She offered me a glass of wine and a cozy blanket, but I couldn't even think straight. My mind felt like it was full of Everything hurt. My pride, my trust and my sense of security. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my bank account over and over, waiting for another notification or email, as if my body refused to believe I had actually managed to stop the damage in time. But the harm wasn't just financial. The next morning, I texted Mark. I told him not to contact me directly. If he had anything to say, he could email me. I also let him know I would be sending my lawyer's contact information soon. He ignored the message. Instead, he called me 5 times and left a long voicemail. I didn't listen to it. Later, his mother sent me a text. We honestly didn't think you'd make such a big deal out of this. It's just money. We're family. I didn't reply. 2 days later, I went back to the house to collect my important documents. My birth certificate, tax files, laptop and a few valuables. I wasn't planning to stay. Mark was there. He looked awful. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying or shouting, or maybe both. I walked in without a word and headed straight upstairs to the office. He followed me. I told them to apologize, he said quietly from the hallway. I told them it was wrong. I kept packing papers into a folder. But you didn't stop them, I replied. You never told me. You defended them. You let them say it was only temporary, that it was just to help them get back on their feet. I turned and looked him straight in the eye. They used me, Mark, and you let them. You didn't just turn a blind eye, you gave them access. You handed them my computer. He didn't answer. When I went back downstairs, Margaret was sitting in the living room, calmly sipping tea as if nothing had ever happened. Oh, Sarah, she said with a smile. Can we please talk like adults? I didn't even slow down. She stood up, blocking the front door. You're really overreacting. You're hurting Mark. I met her gaze and said firmly, move. She didn't. All right, I said. If you want to act like adults, here's how this will go. If you don't step away from that door, I'll call the police and report that someone tried to commit fraud using my account from this address. I have the timestamps, the IP logs, email evidence, and the bank statement. I'll hand it all over. Try me. She moved. I walked out, but the real shock came 2 days later. My lawyer called. Sarah, you need to see this. He sent me a scanned document. A newly submitted loan application. It was filed under my name, sent from my home printer. A $20,000 personal loan, already approved. The funds were scheduled to be deposited the following week. I couldn't believe it. They had tried again. I drove straight to the police station. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was fraud, identity theft, a criminal matter. I filed a report. The detective took my statement along with all the bank details, copies of the loan application, and screenshots of texts and emails, including the bank representative's name. I explained everything: the transfer attempt, the money trail, the matching IP address from our home network. The detective listened closely, calm and professional the entire time. "Do you think your husband knew about this second loan?" he asked. "I don't know," I answered. "But I know his parents did. I'm sure this isn't the first time they've done something like this. If Mark didn't know, then he's being used too, but if he did know, then he's part of it." And then came the biggest gut punch. The detective looked at the loan application, then back at me. "Sarah," he said, "take a look at this signature." I nodded. "That's my name." "But this isn't your signature, is it?" "No," I said quietly. I said, "That's not how I sign anything." The detective nodded. "Looks like forgery to me." I froze. I wasn't angry anymore. I was scared. Scared of what they might do next. Scared of how far this had already gone. Mark's parents hadn't just borrowed money. They had committed a crime, and unless Mark was completely clueless, he had to be involved. I asked the detective, "Can I press charges?" "Yes," he replied. "But I want to run a few more checks first. I'll be in touch." That night, I slept with the lights on in Kayla's guest room. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about betrayal. Deep, calculated, personal betrayal. I couldn't stop thinking about all the little things. The times Mark had brushed off my questions about money. The weird moments when he'd quickly closed the laptop as I walked into the room. The time I couldn't find my credit card for 2 days, and he swore it must have fallen behind the couch. That's when the most terrifying thought hit me. This might not have been the first time, and I had no idea how deep the rabbit hole really went. 3 days after I filed the police report, Detective Ramirez called me again. His voice sounded different this time. Slower, more careful. "Sarah, do you have a minute?" "Yeah," I answered. "We ran the metadata on the loan application. It was submitted from a device registered to your husband's work email." I didn't say a word. "The printer was linked to your home router," he continued, "but the document itself was prepared on a work laptop." Still, I stayed silent. "Do you know where your husband works?" he asked. "Yeah. The city's marketing department." "Right. Well, we checked the timestamp on the document. The file was created at 10:44 a.m. last Thursday. That was during business hours, which meant he had done this while he was supposed to be at work. Not his parents. Mark." The silence inside me felt deafening. He had been in on it. All of it. Every single time I gave him the benefit of the doubt. He had just buried the knife a little deeper. Detective Ramirez spoke again. "We can't prove his parents helped. Not yet. But your husband forged your signature. That part is clear." The next day, I called his HR department. I wasn't trying to start drama. I just needed to confirm something. I pretended I was updating his insurance information. That's when I got hit with the second bombshell. The woman on the phone said, "Actually, Mark hasn't been employed here for months. He was let go in November." It was April. Mark had been pretending to go to work every single day for 5 months, getting dressed, packing a lunch, kissing me goodbye, all of it. He hadn't had a job for months. And suddenly everything made sense. The extra time at home, the long walks, the random errands, the unusual mood swings, the lies. I hung up. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I started digging. I went through old emails, bank statements, account summaries, receipts, anything with his name or mine on it. It took me 2 hours. When I was done, I had a list of suspicious charges and small bank transfers, none of which I remembered authorizing. The total, just over. I sent the entire list to Detective Ramirez at 1:20 p.m. He called back within the hour. "This isn't just a single bad choice anymore, Sarah. This is fraud, identity misuse, financial manipulation, and possibly even a coordinated attempt to commit online deception. If he used your name for any of this, we've got enough to hold him accountable." Then he paused. "Do you want to move forward with charges against your husband?" I didn't answer right away. I needed more. That night, I sent Mark one simple message. "I know everything. Meet me at the park at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone." I chose the park on purpose. Public space, cameras, witnesses. When he showed up, he looked awful. Unshaven, red-eyed. He tried to smile when he saw me, but I didn't return it. I slid an envelope across the bench. Inside were printed screenshots. The fake loan application, the false job information, the altered bank records. He opened it, skimmed the first few pages, and let out a sigh. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." I didn't even blink. "You forged my name. You took money. You lied to me every single day. You even let your parents try to bleed me dry. I was desperate, he said quietly. We were drowning. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. Drowning? I let out a bitter laugh. You lived in a house you didn't pay for, ate food I bought, used electricity I covered. What exactly were you drowning in? Guilt? He stayed silent, and then he said the part he wasn't supposed to. My parents didn't know about the loan. I stared at him. What do you mean? They didn't know. They thought you gave them permission. I told them it was all okay. I felt the air leave my lungs. Wait, so they didn't try to transfer the $50,000? He shook his head. No. I did. I made it look like it came from them. I knew you wouldn't question it if they were the ones to take the blame. I felt sick. He'd let me believe his parents were the ones betraying me. He watched me get ready to call the police on them. And they were innocent at least when it came to the biggest lie. And the smaller withdrawals? I asked. All me, he admitted. I stood up. He reached for my hand. Sarah, please, just listen. I pulled away. You didn't just betray me, I said. You used your own parents as shields for your lie. You were ready to let them take the fall if I decided to press charges. I didn't think it would go this far. You didn't think at all, he replied. And then I walked away. Back at Kayla's, I sat on the floor for a long time staring at the wall, not thinking. I wasn't just mourning the marriage. I was grieving the version of myself that had trusted him, the one who made excuses for him, and now I was done. But the story doesn't end here. Mark made one more mistake. A big one. And that mistake, well, it's going to cost him everything. A week later, I got a call from Detective Ramirez again. Sarah, we've got something. Mark had tried one last move. Apparently he'd applied for another loan in my name the day after our meeting at the park. $15,000 this time. Through a sketchy online lender. The application was denied, but the attempt alone was enough. He's not just careless, Ramirez said. He's desperate and reckless. That was the final straw. I told them I wanted to press every possible charge. Identity theft, forgery, fraud, unauthorized access to financial accounts, misuse of a personal device, everything. I wanted it documented, and I wanted it to stick. Next I called his parents. I met them at a diner near their new place. Yes, they had bought a small modest condo, fully paid off. It turns out they'd used their own savings for it. Mark never helped them. When I sat down, they both looked uncomfortable. George wouldn't meet my eyes, and Margaret was fiddling with a sugar packet. I owe you both an apology, I said calmly. I thought you tried to steal from me. Margaret frowned. Didn't we? No, I replied. You didn't. He did. Then I slid the same packet I gave Mark. Printouts of the evidence. Loan attempts. They read it. Their faces dropped. He told us it was your gift to help us move, Margaret whispered. George shook his head. And I believed him, I said, nodding. I did too, I added, until I didn't. Then I gave them the next piece of paper, a signed witness statement. I wanted them to confirm to the police that they never authorized any transfer, never used my computer, and never had access to my accounts. They signed. 2 weeks later, Mark was arrested. Not in some big public spectacle. He was picked up at a Starbucks, wearing joggers and headphones, texting someone on his phone. I didn't go to court that first day, but I did watch the arraignment online. He looked small, powerless. For the first time he didn't seem like my husband, just some guy who had destroyed his own life. They read out the charges. His lawyer tried to negotiate a deal, but the prosecutor wanted jail time and restitution. Which brings me to my next move. Remember the joint saving? That money was gone. But guess what wasn't? The house. It was mine. My name. My deed. My mortgage. Mark hadn't contributed a single thing. Not a dollar. Not a dime. He never added to it. So I filed a civil suit. I wanted him out for good. And I wanted every penny he took from me back down to the last cent. And I got it. Because when someone forges your name, lies to your face, and uses your love like a piggy bank, you take it back. But here's where the revenge part takes a cold turn. I sent a copy of the court ruling to every employer Mark had applied to after getting fired. Every single one. I had screenshots from his laptop. He used my Wi-Fi for all of it. I knew where he was trying to work, and I wasn't about to let him slide back into a clean slate while I was left to pick up the pieces. They ghosted him. I heard through mutual friends that he's living in a motel now, trying to freelance. No savings, no insurance, no home. But the real twist, he's suing his own parents now.
He claims they should have helped him, that they owed him, that they let him fall. You can't make this stuff up. Margaret called me crying. I told her I hope you win, but I'm not your daughter-in-law anymore. Now for my part, I wasn't perfect. I ignored the signs. I let him stay in my house rent-free. I made excuses when I should have drawn a line. And I waited too long to say no, but I've learned. I've locked down everything. I've rebuilt my credit, closed all shared accounts, updated my will, and rewritten every financial document with legal protections. I've also started speaking at local women's groups about financial abuse and the red flags in marriage. Turns out, a lot of people think it only counts as abuse when there are bruises, but your wallet, that's part of your safety too. So yeah, Mark got what was coming to him. His parents learned who their son really was, and I finally learned that love without boundaries is just a setup for betrayal. If you're in a situation like mine, don't wait until you lose $50,000 to draw the line. Your gut is already telling you what you need to know. Listen to it, save yourself, then take everything.